So you are probably thinking, this is not from One Piece. This is Levi from Attack on Titan. Hey, guess what? I also do reviews for Attack on Titan, so if you like this, you should be over there checking those out. They need some more views, I think. One Piece, Chapter 125, Candle Champion! Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the One Piece Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review, the 125th one, I might add, and that's just sequential chapter-wise, in the epic and classic tale of One Piece. Our last chapter saw us with, Luffy kind of being hypnotized by Miss Goldenweek's various color paint ability that she has. And really, finally, at the end of it, Usopp hitting him with one of his fire stars and it burning off his shirt, which had one of those symbols on it, and Luffy kind of breaking free and getting really mad and, basically saying, I'm going to free my friends now, because he's been getting jerked around here for the last couple of chapters. Finally beat Mr. 3, and then last chapter was Miss Goldenweek, and all the time, Nami, Vivi, and Zoro are standing there, Zoro in a mighty pose, I might add, but they're all standing there turning to wax, because of this candelabra that's up there. So that's where things left off. That's where this one picks up, and it's really kind of a fun one, I thought. It starts out with this nice double-page spread, and Mr. 5 basically going, you can't, your friends are already gone, you can't save them, blah, 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 and Luffy going, that's not true, and I can save them, and I'm going to. And then all of a sudden, as if up out of nowhere, it just winds up rising up. Mr. 3 kind of comes back to consciousness, I guess you would call it, except for he's in this giant robot, cyborg-looking thing, and he calls it his Candle Champion. He winds up talking about how the carapace is basically harder than steel. It has no weak points like armor normally would, because it's basically just wax over wax over wax, and he's able to create this thing. Mr. 5 also goes and says, as he's describing what this thing is, because Luffy's like, what is that? And he goes, so that's his Candle Champion, and he says, Mr. 5 tells him that he once took down, a criminal or what have you, a pirate that was worth 42 million berries, with this particular thing that he has. It's his ultimate creation, right? So we see this thing, and it's really kind of, it kind of looks like Dr. Robotnik from the Sonic the Hedgehog series. It's got like this huge sort of like lumbering upper body and like these kind of smaller legs, and then like these giant like boxing glove looking things on that we can only on its hands, which we can only imagine are made of steel or something. It's obviously it's candle wax, but it's hardened like steel, so for punching and beating the crap out of people. And it's kind of neat looking, actually. It just looks like this giant thing you'd see out of like a fighting video game. So he kind of starts coming at Luffy, and Luffy, it's funny because Luffy kind of admires him initially. He's like, whoa. And then Usopp's sitting there, because of course he got nailed with that breeze breath bomb from Mr. 5 in the last episode. He's kind of sitting there on the sidelines with Carue like, don't admire him, you idiot. So Luffy and Mr. 3 kind of start, they start fighting. They start going toe-to-toe. Luffy, gears up and, gomo, pistol, and he goes to hit him with the pistol and winds up, either hits him and grazes him or misses him completely. But, basically it's just kind of a back-and-forth ordeal. Mr. 3 winds up nailing Luffy a few times. And what winds up happening is Usopp sitting there notices that the mist that's coming down is like, it must be like candle wax in mist form. So as it kind of coats everything and starts to harden over it, what he comes to the conclusion of is that if we can burn that wax, no matter how hard it is, burns, right? Candles, they burn. So he goes and he's going to go to try to shoot one of his flaming stars or whatever at it. And Mr. 5 goes and heads that off and hits him with another breeze breath bomb that winds up, just pretty much completely knocking Usopp out again. And of course, again, you go back to Luffy, and Mr. 3 are going at it and fighting, and Luffy's trying to hold his own against him, but getting pretty irritated just because he's not very effective in what he's been doing to him so far. There's a couple of times, there's one time where, Mr. 3 actually just goes and just pummels him, just smashes him into the ground, and he's just like, give up, I told you, So Usopp goes to Luffy and says, listen, they haven't been hardened into wax that long, okay? Our friends are still alive, we can still save them. So then Luffy goes and he's like, is that true? And Miss Goldenweek goes, yes. And then Mr. 3 goes, and this is where the comedy comes in. Mr. 3 goes, oh, don't tell them all our secrets, like you're giving up all of our privy information over here. So we find out they got some time left, and he's like, well, and Mr. 3 taunts Luffy again, you can't do anything about it. And Luffy says, I don't even need 30 seconds. So Luffy starts coming at him again. Usopp, in the meantime, goes and he's trying to figure something out because, of course, he's been kind of blown up and decimated. He's messed up. He goes and hands this rope off, the one end of it, to Carue and says, Carue, start running. And he tells him as he's running, and then Miss Goldenweek comes over. She's like, what are you up to? I'm going to do my kilo press on you. And she starts out 10 kilos, 50 kilos, 100 kilos. And she's pressing down on him as she's standing on him. So Usopp's taking, like, the weight of, it's going from, like, a wagon to, like, a Volkswagen, And she's got 100 kilos, 200 kilos, 500. Anyway, and he's just, like, yelling out, and you can just picture him just like, Carue, run around them. So he's got Carue running around them, right? Our friends, our wax figurines with this rope. So then Usopp is able to explain that basically, and then of course Luffy's still trying to do something with a fire, so he winds up eventually going and grabbing Mr. Three's hair, his little hair, his head or whatever, and I can only assume that somewhere on his cyborg thing he's got something that emits fire, some sort of flamethrower or some type of deal. And because he's dragging him towards it, he's like, hey, let me go. And Luffy's pulling him towards it, trying to, and then Usopp goes and says, no, you can't, a small flame like that won't work. Ignite the rope. And Luffy's like, the rope? And he's like, yeah, the rope, the special rope that was dipped in, that we dipped in oil, basically, or oil or kerosene, something along those lines. This thing is going to light up good, I also, and I hate to backtrack over here, but even though it's not really important at this point, we had a Sanji sighting, okay? Sanji hasn't been around in like a half a dozen chapters. I was wondering where he was, what he was doing. We see him in the first couple of pages, and that's why I had to backtrack real quick and just mention this, insert this in there. We see him in the first couple of pages, and he's sitting there on the ship like, I wonder where everybody is. It shouldn't, maybe they're in trouble. It shouldn't be taking this long while I'm cooking this lizard dinner. So he finally decides to go off and look for them because they've been gone for a while, right? And he thinks something may actually be wrong. So he steps off, and there's like this saber-toothed tiger, and this is the funny part that I thought was worth mentioning. There's a saber-toothed tiger, it's like, and growls at him, and he approaches it, and then you don't see anything happen, but in the next page, the next panel, he's riding the saber-toothed tiger, and then the saber-toothed tiger, there's a word bubble that says sob, so it's like he kicked him in the face or did something and said, hey, I'm going to ride you now like a horse, and the tiger's just like, God damn it, I'm always getting kicked in the face by this guy. So I just thought that was comical and worth mentioning. Back to the present time, though, and then he winds up kind of as he's going through the forest, he comes upon the little wax house that was made by Mr. Three that him and Miss Goldenweek were originally in. So I think he's going to very quickly catch on and hopefully come and join the foray. But like I said, again, I apologize for the backtracking, but that it is what it is. So we go back to Mr. Three and Luffy, and they're of course trying. They're still getting into it and tangling up, and Luffy has been told about the rope and igniting it. So Luffy goes to go and ignite the rope, and Usopp goes and basically says, "Hey, listen, just grit your teeth and bear it because it's going to be bad. It's going to get hot. It's going to get real hot." But it's kind of cool because that's how the chapter ends, is him going and igniting that, and then you just kind of see this big, flame type explosion deal start. So we can only hope that finally, just finally, we're going to wind up getting them out of this wax trap, this wax entrapment. Certainly, I'm not naive enough to think that any of these main characters are going to die here, but they're certainly in harm's way. They're in danger. They're in peril. And then Zoro, as usual, there's something going on. He's bleeding from some orifice of his body. His legs are hacked up halfway through because he started trying to cut them off. So, so we've got some issues over here. My chapter question, and that's how the chapter ends. My chapter question, though, is going to be, and I think this really has to revolve around the different abilities and things like that. What do you think of the Baroque Works characters and their abilities? And the reason I ask this is because I've been very vocal about this not being one of my favorite areas so far of One Piece, and mainly because I just particularly don't find the characters very likable, and I personally just, in my opinion, just don't identify with or just really enjoy a lot about any of them. Some of them are kind of cool now that I'm seeing more and more of them, but ultimately I don't think very much of them. But as a whole, I understand how the organization works, and the bounty hunters and obviously the higher ranked ones and everything else is we're going to see more in the progression of. But what do you think, brothers and sisters, of the Baroque Works agents that we've seen thus far? And then, of course, their powers, too, because, many have devil fruit powers, abilities, but then also, as it was made clear to me in the last review that I did, Miss Goldenweek's power, because I said I didn't know if it was a devil fruit ability or not, but I was told vehemently that it is not. It's not a devil fruit ability. It's just some type of hypnosis or hypnotic ability she has. So that is the question that I have, and if you could post your comments, your answers to that question in the comments down below, I would much appreciate it. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button, if you think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching you in the next one, Nation. Join the Nerd Nation. Why? Because it's the right thing to do, and because this voice told you to do so. So just do it. Join. Hit the subscribe button. Go ahead, do it.